My mother abandoned me, took all my savings, then suddenly called asking me to pay. This story is very meaningful. Everyone should hear it. Listen to Brian tell the story. I was lying in bed staring at my phone when the message popped up. It was from a number I didn't recognize at first, but I knew who it was the second I read the words. I need $2,000 for Lily's dorm fees. Send it soon. No greeting. No how have you been. No attempt to ask about my life. Just an order. I felt my breath hitch, my chest tightening as I read it again. After all these years, after everything she had done, my mother thought she could just text me out of the blue and expect me to hand over money like some kind of personal ATM. I let out a bitter laugh, the sound hollow in my empty apartment. I hadn't heard from her in almost a year. Before that, it had been even longer. The only time she ever reached out to me was when she wanted something. And now, apparently, she wanted me to pay for her husband's stepdaughter's private dorm room. I put my phone down and pressed my palms into my eyes, willing the wave of anger building inside me to subside. But it didn't. It never did when it came to her. This woman, this person who was supposed to be my mother, had abandoned me years ago. I thought back to the moment it all started, to the day I realized I meant nothing to her. I was 16 when she married Mark, her new husband, and from the moment he and his kids entered the picture, it was like I had disappeared. Mark had 2 children, Noah and Lily, and from day one, they were treated like gold. Me, I was an afterthought. I still remember the way she used to look at me, like I was some kind of burden, like I was in the way of her new, perfect family. I tried to tell myself it wasn't true, that she still loved me, but then she took everything. I had been so careful with my money. My grandparents had given me $22,000 as a graduation gift, money meant to help me start my future. On top of that, I had saved up another $2,000 from my part-time job. It wasn't much, but it was mine. Then one day I checked my bank account and it was all gone. Every last cent. I confronted her, convinced there had to be a mistake. She didn't even look guilty when she admitted it. She told me she had taken it, that it was my punishment for not respecting her new husband and his kids, as if my entire future was just some kind of lesson she needed to teach me. That was the moment I knew. I would never be her priority. I would never be part of her family again. So I left. I packed my bags and moved in with my grandparents, the only people who had ever truly cared about me. Years passed, and she barely acknowledged me. But now suddenly, she thought she could demand money from me. For Lily? I picked up my phone, my fingers hovering over the screen. Then I typed out a single word. No. And I hit send. Her reply came almost immediately. Excuse me? What do you mean, no? We are family. You can't just refuse to help. I stared at the message, my fingers tightening around my phone. Family? She hadn't cared about family when she drained my savings. She hadn't cared about family when she left me behind for Mark and his kids. But now when she needed money suddenly, we were family again? I took a deep breath, forcing myself to stay calm. Then I typed, I don't owe you anything. Find someone else to pay for Lily's dorm. I hit send and waited. The typing bubble popped up instantly. How dare you speak to me like this, after everything I've done for you? I almost laughed out loud. Everything she had done for me? What exactly had she done? Ignored me for years, stolen my future, treated me like an outsider while she played happy family with her new husband? My hands shook as I typed. You stole from me. You chose them over me. You don't get to crawl back now and demand my help. I don't owe you anything. I stared at the message for a second before hitting send. This time, she didn't reply right away. Good. Maybe she finally got the message. I tossed my phone onto the bed and let out a shaky breath. But deep down, I knew this wasn't over. She wasn't the type to let things go. And I was right. The next morning, my phone buzzed again. Not a text this time, a call. I let it ring, watching her name flash on the screen, waiting for it to stop. But it didn't. After the 4th call, I finally picked up. Before I could even say anything, she started talking. Listen, I talked to Mark and we came up with a new arrangement, she said, her voice smooth like she was offering me some kind of favor. I frowned. What? Lily really needs this private dorm room. Sharing with others would be too difficult for her. So we decided she should get a 2-bedroom apartment near campus. I blinked, not sure if I had heard her correctly. And who exactly is supposed to pay for this? I asked, already knowing the answer. Well, we figured you could help, she said, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. It's only $1,000 a month. That's nothing for you now that you have a good job. I felt my jaw clench. $1,000 a month for a girl who barely knew I existed? I let out a breath, trying to keep my voice steady. Why is this my problem? She gasped like I had just slapped her. Because we are family. Because you never gave anything back. It's time you contribute. I almost saw red. Contribute? I had given everything. I had given up my savings, my home, my mother. I had spent years trying to understand why I wasn't enough for her. And now she wanted more? I don't owe you anything, I said again, my voice firmer this time. But you do, she snapped. You lived off your grandparents for years like a freeloader while we struggled. Don't you think it's time to pay your share? I felt something snap inside me. When are you going to pay me back the $24,000 you stole from me? Silence. Then she exploded. You ungrateful brat. After everything I've done for you, you dare bring up money? I sacrificed so much for you. I laughed, the sound sharp and bitter. You sacrificed nothing. You abandoned me. You stole from me. And now you have the nerve to demand more? No, I'm done. I hung up before she could say another word. And this time, I blocked her number. A strange calm settled over me after I blocked her number. For the first time in years, I felt like I had finally taken control. No more guilt trips. No more expectations. No more pretending like she would ever change. But I knew my mother. She wasn't the type to give up. And I was right. A few days later, I was lying on my couch, exhausted after work, when my phone buzzed again. This time, it wasn't her. It was my Aunt Karen. Your mother has been calling me nonstop. She says you blocked her, and she's really upset. She wants to talk to you. I think you should hear her out. I rolled my eyes. Of course she had dragged Karen into this. My aunt had always been the peacemaker of the family, always trying to keep things civil. But she didn't understand. She's not upset, Karen, I typed back. She's mad because I won't give her money. That's all this is. A minute later, she replied, maybe you should talk to her. Set some boundaries. I stared at the message, debating how to respond. The boundary is already set, I finally sent. I'm not paying for anything. I'm done with the guilt trips. She didn't reply after that. Good. But I should have known my mother wouldn't stop there. A week later, she showed up. I had just gotten home from work, my bag slung over my shoulder, when I saw her standing outside my apartment building. She was leaning against the wall, arms crossed, her face twisted in irritation. I stopped in my tracks. For a moment, we just stared at each other. Then she pushed off the wall and walked toward me. We need to talk. I sighed, already exhausted. If this is about money, you're wasting your time. Her jaw tightened. I didn't raise you to be so disrespectful. I let out a sharp laugh. Respect? From the woman who stole my money, abandoned me, and only calls when she needs something? Her eyes darkened. Lily deserves this, she snapped. She's not like you. She needs help. Something inside me snapped. So you think I should help just because I'm doing okay now? Where was this energy when I needed help? I asked, my voice rising. Where was this concern when you drained my savings? You didn't care about my future then, and now you expect me to care about hers? She opened her mouth, but I didn't let her speak. You barely invite me to family events. You replaced me, and now you think I'm supposed to swoop in and save the day just because you finally noticed I exist? She just stood there silent. For a second, I thought she might finally understand, but then she squared her shoulders and sneered. You've always been selfish, she said. I tried to give you a better life, and this is how you repay me? You're turning your back on family. My fist clenched. You gave me nothing, I said through gritted teeth. You took from me my money, my time, my peace. You chose them over me, and now you're living with the consequences. Her lips curled in anger. You owe this family. I stepped back. No, I said, my voice steady. Lily is your daughter, not mine. I owe you nothing. I turned and walked toward my building. She grabbed my arm. I yanked it free, looking her dead in the eye. Goodbye, I said. Then I walked inside, leaving her standing out in the cold. As soon as I shut the door behind me, I exhaled. A mix of emotions crashed into me. Relief, anger, sadness. But more than anything, I felt free. For the first time in my life, I had finally let go. Weeks passed in silence. I went back to my life. My job, my peaceful routine. There were no more calls, no messages, no sudden appearances outside my apartment. It felt like I had finally closed that chapter. Then one night, my phone rang. I almost didn't pick up. I was tired, emotionally drained from everything that had happened. But something about the number made me pause. It wasn't my mother's. It wasn't even Aunt Karen's. It was a hospital. "Are you related to Martha Reynolds?" the nurse on the other end asked. My stomach dropped. "She's your mother, correct?" Yeah, I managed to say. "What happened?" "She was brought in earlier this evening. She collapsed in a grocery store. She's stable now, but we need someone to come in and discuss her condition." I gripped the edge of my kitchen counter, my knuckles white. This was the moment I had always imagined. The moment she would need me. The moment I would have the power to decide whether I wanted to help or turn my back on her. And yet standing there, heart pounding, I didn't feel powerful at all. I felt like a scared child again. I don't know how long I stood there, staring at my phone. But eventually, I grabbed my coat and headed to the hospital. When I arrived, I found her in a small room, hooked up to an IV. She looked so much smaller than I remembered. Her face was pale, her eyes hollowed from exhaustion. When she saw me, she blinked in shock. "You came," she whispered. I swallowed, stepping closer. "What happened?" She let out a dry laugh, shaking her head. "Turns out, when you live off instant noodles and stress for months, your body starts to give out," she muttered. "Who knew?" I crossed my arms, studying her. "Why didn't you tell me you were struggling?" Her eyes darkened. "Why would I? You made it pretty clear you wanted nothing to do with me." I let out a slow breath. "That's not true," I said quietly. "I wanted nothing to do with the person who used me. But this," I gestured around the hospital room. "This is different," she scoffed. "Is it?" "Yes," I said firmly, "because this isn't about money. This is about you. And whether you like it or not, I still care." Her breath hitched. For the first time, I saw something crack in her expression. "I was awful to you," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. I nodded. "Yeah, you were." Her eyes watered. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. So I spoke instead. "But you're still my mother," I said, "and I don't want to watch you destroy yourself." She covered her face with her hands, shoulders shaking. "I don't know how to fix this," she whispered. I sat down beside her. "Maybe you start by trying," I said. She looked up at me, tears in her eyes, and for the first time in years, I saw something I hadn't seen before. Remorse. Real, genuine remorse. Not manipulation. Not guilt-tripping. Just a mother who had finally realized what she had lost. And maybe, just maybe, was willing to change. Was this forgiveness? I wasn't sure. But maybe it was a start. Sometimes rock bottom is the only place where real change begins. What do you think? Would you have gone to the hospital or would you have walked away? Let me know in the comments. And if you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe for more real-life stories.